Let's talk about information bias. So, information bias is one that has gotten a lot of traction as the information age has kind of emerged and we all find ourselves in more information available to us than ever. And I'll think about this almost as I'll call this the PowerPoint syndrome for a moment, but stay with me because information bias is something that we all get stuck in. It's where you get more addicted to gathering information than finding real solutions. So stay with me because by the end of this video, I'll give you 5 ways that things you can practice that will help you overcome information bias and discover those truths, solve those literal and metaphorical treasure hunts, and discover solutions to problems that you might have missed otherwise. So the PowerPoint syndrome that I'm describing is this. I remember when PowerPoint first came out, people started using it for presentations, and they got so excited about all of the images and the visuals and the things you could do to represent your ideas that more people were spending more time searching for clip art and images than they were actually preparing the substance of their presentation. And I noticed that in some cases, presentations began to decline in their substance and their quality because people were so focused upon just the joy and the excitement of discovering another image that just represents this right or makes it exciting or interesting. Well, something similar happens when we are searching for solutions to problems. There are some of us that have a tendency to want to be really, really informed, which can be a good thing. But we get so addicted and caught up to just gathering more and more information that while we're trying to solve a problem, we have piles and piles. It's like a person who's trying to buy a car and they've spend hundreds of hours researching every possible car and every nuance and every detail. Maybe you do it just for fun and that's fine, but you probably could have made just as good or even a better decision with less information had you not just got caught up in that information bias trap that we can all get drawn into. So how do we overcome it? Well, let's walk through. I've jotted down, as I usually do, 5 practices that you can work on. The first thing is to define what you need to know when you're trying to solve a problem. Like, how much do I actually need to know? Even in things like treasure hunts, there's a famous treasure hunt going on right now by John Collins Black, and all the clues are in this book called There's Treasure Inside. And I think some people may get caught up in the idea that I have to solve every clue. I have to understand everything perfectly in order to discover the treasure. But that's probably not true. You may actually be able to discover the treasure with only a third of the clues solved, or a few key clues. That's a possibility. That's often the case when we're trying to solve problems is more information doesn't always lead to wiser or better decisions. You want to have that right balance. So define what is it that I actually need to know to make a good decision here, and write that down early on so that once you get those answers, you can start moving on to the next steps. The second one is accept incomplete information. That's part of making decisions in the real world, is that in many times, especially with decisions we're making in life and work, we're always going to have some measure of incomplete information. You're not going to have every single answer, every single thing solved and figured out perfectly before you can take action. We all have to make decisions on partial information, but we can figure out what's most important to know, and then we can accept that, okay, it's okay to move forward with some incomplete information. Great decision makers work with uncertainty, and waiting for every detail oftentimes means you're missing out on really important opportunities, especially time-sensitive ones. The third one is to watch for what's really just hidden procrastination. Sometimes we get caught up in seeking more information because we're afraid of being wrong, we're intimidated by the situation, and so it's just easy to collect information. It gives us a false sense of progress and certainty and accomplishment that I've collected all of these papers and so forth, and yet all the new information is really just redundant. It's really nothing new. You've learned all of the key facts and information, and it's time for you to move on. And so watch for that. Keep your eyes open and just ask the question, am I really just procrastinating, or do I need more information to solve this problem or to get my way to discovering that literal or figurative treasure, or discover that truth? But you got to be honest with yourself, by the way. That's really important. And it's sometimes being honest with ourselves is one of the more difficult aspects of a journey to discover a truth or solve a problem. The fourth one I have jotted down here is use decision deadlines. I'm not actually very good at this one, to tell the truth. It's kind of hard for me at times to just give a fixed deadline, but just say, I'm going to collect information, I'm going to study this and figure it out for this amount of time. And once I get to that time, I'm going to review all of my information. I'm going to make some educated guesses and try to take the next step. One thing that happens in literal treasure hunts that fascinates me is there are people that will study and try to discover all the clues for a long, long time, but they never actually go boots on the ground and look for it. And they miss the chance to learn, because a lot of times you learn some things by going out and trying it, which is actually the last one that I want to talk about here. So come up with some deadlines and then move from gathering information to developing some theories and testing them. And obviously you want low stakes tests if at all possible. Then the fifth one, though, is to practice taking action even a little bit early. There is some benefit to this ready, fire, aim kind of approach in some aspects of problem solving, because it's not until you come up with a theory and test it out in a real world situation or some kind of simulated situation that you can gain the necessary insights to actually get closer to a real solve or a real solution to a problem, to a puzzle, to something else. So sometimes actually just trying it works. And I'm sure you've heard about some of these studies that were done of these engineering students compared to young children trying to build things or solve problems with pieces. And they'd see the children sometimes be more successful than the engineering students just because they tried more times. They weren't afraid to fail. They got out there, they tested it, and then they'd learn what worked and what didn't, and they'd adapt and they'd adjust from that. That is a great way to help yourself overcome this information bias, is gather some information, come up with a basic theory, test it out, try it out, see what you learned from it, jot down your notes and observations. Then you can actually cycle back, gather more information, go through that cycle a few different times. Just make sure you don't just get stuck on the one. Now, there is the equal problem of someone who never gathers information and they just run out and start randomly searching or trying to solve problems or throwing things against the wall to see what's going to stick, figuratively speaking. And that can be just as problematic. But you want to have that balance between just gathering information forever and not really moving to the next step, and then the other extreme of just sort of randomly trying things. And so build yourself a cycle where you can gather information, come up with theories, try them out, test them, learn from them, jot thoughts down, and then go through the cycle over and over again, see where it might get you. I find that to be incredibly useful, actually, in my work, in research projects that I've done over the years, and also in puzzle solving and games and other things like that. I hope you find this useful, and I hope you consider putting some of these into practice, because that's where the real learning and fun begins. Look forward to your comments. Thanks.